Welcome to the Energy Toning Podcast, where I talk about all things energy medicine, consciousness, and how you can live in a higher vibration. Hi everyone, thanks for joining me. My name is Liz, and today I've got a very special guest on the show who's a very good friend of mine. His name is Gavin, and I wanted to interview him because he has had a couple of experiences with the plant medicine ayahuasca. So we're going to dive deep into the nature of reality today and consciousness in general and general spiritual topics. So our conversation went for 2.5 hours or so I'll be dividing this up into several parts. So please enjoy part 1. So welcome, Gavin. Thanks for agreeing to be interviewed about your experience with ayahuasca.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
No worries at all. So often when I talk about you to some of my friends, I describe you as my spiritual friend or my consciousness friends. But I heard a term the other day which I really like, which is psychonaut.
Psychonaut,
and
that's
so
interesting.
I'm going to call you my psychonaut friend from now on. So what's led you to become interested in spirituality and consciousness in general?
I think I've always been interested in anything spiritual, but obviously in the beginning that wasn't the label I used to give it. For me, it was just the way I see things, the way I see life, the outlook itself. You can call it spiritual. I call it, well, I don't have a name for it, but it's just you're just seeing things in a very different way, not materialistically, not seeing things beyond what they normally appear as. Yeah.
You once mentioned to me that you remembered your birth or the time of your birth. So I'm just wondering if that might have been a trigger for you.
The recollection and the memory of my birth happened while I had already started meditating. I think it was just a couple of years ago, and I have been meditating on and off for the last 15 or so years. For the last 15 years. It did not initiate me into spirituality, but I think it accelerated me further.
So it was like a deepening kind of...
It was deepening, yeah.
Yeah.
Meditation started off as something, as a relaxing activity, which then transformed into a journey into the innerverse.
Was there a particular time that got you into meditation? Like maybe initially it was like a stress relief thing that you thought, oh, maybe it would be a good idea to meditate, and then it was like this sort of progression from there, or was it a little bit different?
It was when I was in school. I did a course called Silva Mind Control, and what interested me in the course was the fact that I read about the fact that you can heal people from a distant healing, and I thought that was really cool. It was like this, I've always been interested in sci-fi shows and movies and stuff, and I thought that was like, it's like Jedi powers. You could heal someone from a distance. I think that was really fascinating for the 17-year-old, and that's when I took up. I did the course and I started meditating, and that was it. And it was only in the last couple of years. It was about 2 years ago. I think it was about 2 years ago that in one of my meditation sessions, that I traveled back to the time when I was born. You know how there's a difference between a dream versus an imagination versus an old memory? Mm-hmm. After I got out of my meditation session of experiencing my birth, the intellectual side of me, my intellectual mind started questioning the very experience itself, thinking that maybe it's just an imagination and not a memory. Mm-hmm. And
because I particularly remember you saying to me at the time you experienced that you had this sense that maybe being born onto the earth for you was a mistake. It was something that you're not so, I guess, like it was something that maybe you were tricked into coming into a physical body. And I found that really interesting in that there was obviously something experienced before.
Yeah. So the experience itself was like this. I distinctly remember being in the spirit form, and I distinctly remember a feeling of being greater than what one can feel within the confines of a human body. Mm-hmm. it was vastly, distinctly different, and it was very exaggerated. It's like having more senses than just these 5 senses that we experience now. And almost like a limitless ability to experience and absorb your surroundings, and seeing beyond time, I guess. So the experience of coming into the body was very vivid. I remember almost being led into, or being talked into coming into this body. And it was only in the moments of actually coming into the body, like locking into the body, is when I realized that it was a trick. It was something that I didn't want to do consciously, or whatever the right word is. My spiritual self did not agree to do it, because at that moment I knew that was something that I had done before, and I was led to the same path once again. And
it's like a reoccurring.
It's like cycle. Making a mistake again, but but this time you had the clarity of not doing it again, but somehow you got talked into doing it.
So it's kind of like you had this memory that came through just at that moment, that most people's memory probably been blocked off at that point.
Yeah.
They're not remembering that, but you had like this slither of
That's right.
otherness.
That's right. The other interesting thing that happened at that moment was I distinctly remember the body itself being alive in a way. If I were to choose a word, I would say it was conscious. So the consciousness, I would say, is not the same thing as the spirit itself. So it's a consciousness. I believe now, after my experience, is that consciousness is a property of the body, whereas the spirit locks in with the consciousness, and they kind of work in tandem. They're one, but they're 2 separate forms of energies. The other distinct difference between consciousness and your spirit form is that the conscious body is aware that it has a beginning and an end. It is aware that there was a birth to it, and the conscious body would one day die. Die is just a choice of word. It's just an ending. The spirit itself, you call it the spirit or the soul, whatever the energy. So the spirit is always aware that it's playing along with the consciousness. The spirit is aware that it must work together with the consciousness for the benefit of both. Basically, it's a quid pro quo scenario. In my case, I wasn't happy about the fact that I was doing it again. I was made to do it again.
Do you ever get a sense that maybe on some level you at some point may have decided, but then realised that you made a mistake by deciding? Was there that kind of memory there, or is it?
No, not. It wasn't like that. You know how in books and there are books where we read about life between lives, and loved ones waiting for you at the other end, things like that. I distinctly remember having other energies or spirits, whatever you call it, around me, which were quote unquote loved ones. The ones who are in your what do you call a soul group of sorts, or the soulmates of sorts. They're like soulmates. So it's like a group there are a number of spirits who are part of your soulmate group.
And would they be like, part of like a past life?
It could be, but the configuration or the group of those souls don't remain together forever. They keep changing after a certain number of lifetimes. Now, I was convinced by these soulmates that this is something that I must do. This is something that I want to do. I was sold into the idea. I was convinced that yes, that's what I want. But it was only in the moments of fusing into the body that I kind of woke up, that I realized that I was tricked into doing this. And I also distinctly remember that I didn't have any animosity or any negative feelings for the other souls, because they themselves were misguided. they
were playing their part.
They were playing their part. They didn't know what they were doing. But I knew clearly that this was not my choice. In saying that, I did choose the family that I was. I did choose the family that I would be born in, because the decision was made much before I got into the body. And that time I was sold into the idea that that's exactly what I want to do. And that's how I picked it. Of course, in saying that, in the conscious form, in this body form, I have no idea why did I make such a decision. Was I smoking something? Was I high? I don't know what happened there. But yeah, that's what it is.
It's interesting. I'm really particularly interested in that story of yours, because I distinctly remember my daughter coming home from daycare once. She was age 3, and she was really, really sad. And I said, "What's the matter, darling?" She goes, "It's just the world. The world is making me forget." I'm like, I knew she wasn't talking about forget, just daily things. It's like forget something otherworldly, like she's losing that connection. And I just feel like at that moment she'd crossed over and she'd forgotten whatever it was before. And I was like on the edge of my seat. It's like, are you about to tell me the secret of the universe? Like, forgot what? And she couldn't articulate, but I knew that she wasn't referring to everyday things. So, and I'd heard another story that my dad told me once. I think it was family friends of his or something had overheard a 3-year-old girl talking to a baby, going up and whispering in the baby's ears, "Can you tell me what God is like? Because I'm starting to forget." And, that just sort of sends... So there's something about age 3, and they do often say 0 to 3 is a very particular time. And then... so I've got just those 2 stories and your story, and it kind of makes me connect a few dots. And
post my ayahuasca experience, in fact, I now know why it is happening now more than ever before, and this will only increase in number, because the children of today and of tomorrow, future, they will be more. What's the word? Maybe I can say spiritual. They'll be more spiritual, more sensitive and connected than the predecessors, the past generations and everything. So it's just a change. It's just the age that we're in. Changing times.
So speaking of ayahuasca, what were your original goals for wanting to try ayahuasca? Maybe we should explain what ayahuasca is first, because some people may not know.
Ayahuasca is a Peruvian plant. It's a combination of 2 different herbs that are local to Peru. I'm not too sure. I don't quite remember what the ingredients are. They're basically 2 different Peruvian plants that are brewed together for almost 3 days.
And it only comes from, so it's like Peru, like Amazon kind of.
Yeah, it's native to Peru.
And does it grow? Do you know if it grows anywhere else in the world? Or
not those 2, but you do have similar plants that induce altered states of consciousness, and such plants exist in almost every continent. And you have native plants, and each native plant has a uniquely different property compared to a different one from another continent.
Makes me wonder what the Aborigines were have, in all their ceremonies that probably no one talks about, but probably there's something like that going on with shamanism.
And the interesting part about ayahuasca itself is that the 2 plants only work with each other. So there are hundreds and thousands of different plant varieties in Peru, and for a tradition that's been going on for hundreds of years, it's hard to imagine how they could figure out that these 2 work together, and
given the variables,
given the probabilities, and according to them, it's the plant itself that told them what to pick and how to brew them together and how to make the brew, basically. So that's, according to them, that's what... or some spirit world or whatever talking to them. It's such a different
so different culturally to us that it's hard for us to relate to. But it seems to be like, you know, compared to the 60s and 70s where everyone was going off on psychedelics and it was very much a recreational thing. It's all, you know, free love, let's all have a good time. It seems now that more and more people are using psychedelics in a very different way. And it is to explore consciousness or that otherworldly part of themselves, and you know, from just all different types of people, like from executives to whoever, like really. But and it also less people are trekking over to Peru and the Amazon to do it. It's coming, you know, over from all over the world, and so, you know, different countries. So what was your motivation for wanting to? What was your main goal when you're thinking about? Was it to experience, or was it to get answers? Was it all of the above?
I do a lot of reading, and I read a lot of different kind of stuff, and I've obviously read about things like ayahuasca, DMT, iboga, mushrooms, and, you know, all sorts of stuff. My interest has always been limited to the spiritual side of these mind-altering plants and medicines. And what I personally feel that only, I'm talking about my experience. In my experience, I feel the meditation has taken me to a certain point, and 15 years of meditating has brought me to a point where I need answers, and the answers can only come from an altered state of mind, not an intellectually conscious state. Like, for example, right now, we can think and intellectualize about an idea, find a solution to a problem, but sometimes we're looking for answers that exist beyond the mind, beyond this reality. And having read so many books on spirituality and mind-altering drugs and natural plant medicines and so on and so forth, I knew that this was something I just had to try. I wanted to try it and see if there's any merit to these what people say and these things. So yeah, that was pretty much why it was on my bucket list. And I just had to try ayahuasca. I was lucky that I got the opportunity to try it this year, and it was an experience like nothing else. Normally when you go for an ayahuasca retreat in Peru, it's usually a 3-day or a 5-day retreat with you having ayahuasca for 3 days every day, or maybe 5 days. But I only had the chance to have the medicine for 2 days, and it was almost a month ago, and I'm still processing all the information because the experience was very, very vivid and profound. Yeah.
So what's the preparation for ayahuasca?
So we were asked to cut down on all sweet and oily food substances and non-vegetarian food for at least 2 weeks prior to the ceremony.
I remember you saying after this experience, you said, you're here now, you're present. It was like a before and after ayahuasca comparison. And the aftermath was that the perception I got anyway, that you feel more present in the now.
Oh yes, I remember that. You know, when we're sleeping and we have a dream, and the next thing we wake up, we can distinctly, for the first few seconds at least, for the first couple of minutes maybe, we sometimes remember the dreams. But at the same time, we know how distinctly different the feeling was, the experience was, as compared to the reality after waking up. Now, my experience with ayahuasca was much like the dream versus a wake-up experience, whereas this reality right now feels like a dream compared to the experience of waking up while in the altered state. After having ayahuasca. And even though the experience lasted for 4 or 5 hours, it's been 1 month, and I still feel that I didn't come back alone. It was like a door that I opened, and now I've got an access to a different reality, a different world, which is much more real than this reality, which is much more colorful, much more vibrant, much more detailed than this. This feels more like a dream compared to the other version. For the first time, I felt like I was finally awake. So, and in the dreams, we sometimes don't have control of what's happening in the dream and, you know, what things happening to us. Whereas in reality, we feel we are in control of everything, almost everything at least. And the ayahuasca experience took me to a reality which was more real than this reality. And hence, for the first time, I felt like I was more in control than I've ever been.
More in control in this physical reality.
Right. Yes.
And how, like, when you say that you feel like a door was opened, do you feel like that you can access that door anytime, or is it something that you need to get into a meditative state?
No, the door's open now. And the most amazing experience, one of the most amazing experiences I had was on day 2 on the ayahuasca retreat. On the second day, I felt like all the information within this universe, of this world and of the world outside this reality, every question, every answer to every question, everything, every possible knowledge was suddenly within me. Because it was like, you know how in the movie Matrix, Neo is getting a download of
all the different
programs and stuff. It was pretty much like that. But it was more instant, and it was as if the mind had just suddenly expanded, or you were given a permission to an infinitely large, huge library of information that you could tap into. And now that door is open, and now I feel like I know that I can tap into information, and it's there right now.
Lots of people talk about the Akashic records. Do you think that's something
that's essentially it?
Yeah.
In my experience, and with the current knowledge, I confidently feel, I believe that, or rather I know that all our memories are stored in the Akashic records, or the ether, whatever you call it. These are just the words. It's definitely not stored in the brains. It's not stored in our minds. The mind is like a trans receiver. It transmits and receives information. All the information is stored in this cloud called Akashic record or ether or whatever you call it. But it's not in the head.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
And a lot of science is also saying the same.
Yeah.
That the information is not.
Yeah. It's only a matter of time for the science to catch up to this reality that people are proud of their brains, but the brain is just a trans receiver, nothing more. You know how like in a TV, you're watching the news, but the newsreader is not sitting inside the TV. You've got a TV tuner which is tuning in to the waves.
Actually, I was listening to Bruce Lipton yesterday, and he was talking about that very thing, that the information comes through like a TV program, but if you smash the TV, it doesn't mean that the signal is gone.
That's right. And interestingly, when I was coming out of the effects of ayahuasca, I think it was on day 2, I was trying to remember, I was trying to remember who I was. I was trying to remember how to stand, what my name was, things like that. It wasn't like I was trying to look into my head. It was similar to downloading some file from a cloud. I knew it's there. I didn't have it, and I just needed to download it. And similarly, I could download someone else's file. I was connecting into the shaman's file. I could see her life records, her experiences and things like that for a split second. And that's when I realized that all the information is open, it's public. There's no privacy, there's no lock and key. You can access anyone's information. Yeah. Which was quite a revealing experience for me. At the end of the day, it's like, I'm from a technological background. I'm from IT, so I see everything, and that's the language that I use. So in my world, it's basically an open access. Everything is a public record, and it's limited. You basically have an access to limitless knowledge. If you have the right technology, you can tap into anyone's files, and you can pretty much become them, because you can download that information into you and take their identity. Yeah. If there were cloning technology, and if you were to, I'm just hypothesizing here, if you were to clone an individual, all you would have to do is create a biological clone, which you may or may not need to clone the person. You just need a biological body. and animate the body, which is make it conscious. And as for the spirit itself, it's basically a collection. It's probably an Akashic record of sorts. It's your identity, who you are, is a collection of all your information. If you download that information into a body, then you pretty much have
you've made that
clone, spiritual clone.
So there you have it. That was part 1 of my interview with Gavin. Hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for the next part very soon. Just before you go, would you like to supercharge your meditation? Would you like to release negative energy and experience profound inner peace in 10 minutes or less? If so, take the 7-day challenge that has freed up people's hearts, minds and emotions and unleash their personal power using nothing but their own voice. Click the link below for more information.